Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we're digging into Nicholas Sang's 2025 book, Dilemma at Work: When Duty Clashes with Conscience. It's this absolutely brilliant exploration of workplace ethics, moral dissonance, and you know that deeply uncomfortable friction you feel when your job demands something that completely contradicts what your gut tells you is right? Yeah, we're talking about that today. So right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself a question and be really honest about your Monday to Friday life here. Who do you really work for? Are you working for your boss, the company's shareholders, or at the end of the day, are you ultimately working for your own internal moral compass? It's a super provocative question, for sure, and it's literally the exact question sitting at the very heart of the modern professional experience. To really wrap our heads around this dilemma, we have to look at these two forces that are basically constantly at war inside of us. On one side, we have duty. This is what the system expects: the rules, the policies, the corporate hierarchy, designed to keep an organization churning along. And let's be real, without duty, organizations would just descend into total chaos, right? But then on the other side, we have conscience. This speaks to our deeper ethical principles. It's the profoundly human part of us, the part shaped by our upbringing, our culture, our beliefs. The friction happens because, well, we aren't machines. When organizational duty collides with our personal conscience, boom, we are thrust into a major dilemma.
Section 1. The Crossroads of Conscience.
So this crossroads is that terrifying intersection where the employee handbook demands one path, but your morals are just screaming another. Standing here means weighing the cost of obedience against the cost of betrayal. Sang gives some incredibly relatable examples here. Imagine you're a corporate worker instructed to just quietly conceal a financial error, or maybe a nurse forced to follow some rigid hospital policy that actually limits compassionate patient care. Now, if you choose duty, if you just obey, sure, you secure your job, you keep your boss happy, but you're left with this heavy, lingering guilt. But if you choose conscience, you affirm your integrity, absolutely, but you risk severe career setbacks. It's exactly like the drastic choices made by whistleblowers. They choose conscience over organizational duty, exposing corruption, but often at the immense cost of job loss and even social isolation. It's basically a choice between two very different kinds of profound sacrifice. Section 2. Navigating the invisible traps. And this brilliantly illustrates how massive ethical failures really start with some giant cinematic betrayal. No, they usually start with good intentions that slowly curdle over time, right in the middle of our totally normal daily emails and team meetings. Because loyalty is a virtue, right? We all want to stand by our colleagues. But extreme loyalty carries a pretty dangerous shadow. Step 1 might be incredibly innocent, like just covering a small spreadsheet error for a super stressed coworker. But that leads to Step 2. Normalizing misconduct. The silence just becomes routine. And then, before you know it, you arrive at Step 3, complicity in serious wrongdoing. What started as just standing by a buddy morphs into shielding deliberate negligence, or even something crazy like embezzlement. You become trapped by your past choices, terrified that exposing them now is going to implicate you too. It's a slippery slope. A major driver of this pipeline is what Sang calls the comfort that corrupts. And honestly, we all love the comfort of our daily workplace routine. It gives us stability, it makes us efficient, but routine is an invisible trap. Think about it. When we perform tasks mechanically, just clearing out an inbox, clicking approve on standard requests, our minds drift from active engagement to just passive compliance. And this mental inertia actually dulls our moral awareness. We start normalizing questionable behavior without even really noticing, simply because, well, it's just the way things are done around here. The real danger isn't that we make up and make one catastrophic choice. It's that we surrender to the quiet tyranny of habit and basically stop making choices altogether. As Sang so profoundly puts it, the inconvenience of integrity is the measure of whether one's values are real convictions or mere ideals spoken in comfort. Wow, right? Integrity is almost never convenient. It just doesn't bend to circumstance. Your character is truly tested only when staying silent feels much safer, when looking the other way is just easier, and when doing the right thing actually becomes personally costly. And of course, doing the right thing isn't always black and white. Most of our professional lives are spent in these murky gray areas. We're constantly forced to weigh competing values where honoring one means compromising another. Like, do you prioritize efficiency or compassion for an employee who's struggling? Do you choose loyalty to your team or absolute fairness to a client? Honesty or necessary discretion? These gray areas are incredibly challenging because they expose the limits of our certainty. They demand humility and careful reflection because, frankly, neither approach offers a perfect, clean solution.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds when the system fails.
So, what happens when the workplace environment itself turns toxic? You see, strict hierarchical institutional rules are meant to maintain order and fairness, but there is a massive paradox here. Sometimes rigid structures end up rewarding the exact wrong people. When organizations rely solely on blind regulations without ever questioning their moral spirit, they empower individuals who know exactly how to manipulate the loopholes. Basically, cunning gets mistaken for competence. And the system, the very system designed to promote justice, paradoxically ends up legitimizing injustice. And that leads us to a pretty stark reality: ethics on trial. In morally inverted workplaces that value blind conformity over truth, doing what is right suddenly feels like a crime. If you are the ethical employee who absolutely refuses to compromise, you aren't celebrated. Nope. You're questioned, you're viewed as a disruptive threat to the system's order. Ethics ceases to be the shared foundation and instead becomes a heavy, personal burden that you have to carry entirely alone. So, the crucial point is Section 4, the ultimate moral choice. When the system fails, and when the rules are actively rewarding the wrong behaviors, everything comes back down to the individual, you and me. We have to contrast obedience with responsibility. Obedience provides necessary order. It's just following the rules, right? But responsibility, that provides meaning. Obedience without responsibility is just mechanical action. True responsibility requires the courage to interpret your duty through the lens of your conscience. You aren't just a cog in a machine, you are a moral agent. True professionalism isn't perfect blind obedience, it's thoughtful compliance. It's knowing exactly where your role serves the collective good and where it simply must yield to personal principle. And here's a fun fact for you. Nicholas Sang didn't just develop these insights in a vacuum. He spent over 2 decades working in vastly different corporate environments across Kenya, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. This brilliantly highlights that these aren't just regional or cultural issues. The tension between survival and values, between the company and the self, that is a universally human dilemma that totally transcends borders. So when you reach that inevitable breaking point, you are faced with the ultimate choice every professional must make: standing up versus walking away. Now, standing up is the defiance of facing conflict head-on. It's declaring that truth deserves a voice, even if it brings isolation. But listen, don't mistake walking away for weakness. Walking away requires the quiet strength to withdraw from a toxic system just to preserve your integrity. It's the refusal to be absorbed by an environment you cannot change without betraying yourself. Both paths require immense courage, just of very different kinds. Which brings us to the end of our explainer and leaves us with a final, lingering question. Honestly, it's the core dilemma of our working lives. You are going to face this tension. The systems you work in will test you. So I leave you with this to chew on. When duty and conscience clash in your own life, which will define your path forward?